good Monday morning to you. Welcome on into Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. I am Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne, and we are powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura. And for the first time in several months, Claibs, you and I are both back in the St. Louis area after a very busy last 3 months of our travel schedules.
I almost forgot where I lived. It had been that long, and
Did the dogs remember you?
yeah, after the second day,
Yeah.
after seeing some teeth and not sure, but no, it's all good now.
Nice. Well, you are back. The Cardinals still have one more stop to make down in Florida. I think they started already. I'm not sure if, but this is a game like yesterday. 24-1. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't. You look at that.
Not at all.
So I want to get into the rosters. But I want to get into this first. I have two questions for you, very, very similar, but I'm going to ask them very differently. You saw a lot of spring training down there, whether it was practices, games, everything else in between. Give me something that happened at spring training that concerns you going into opening day.
Backup catching, although we won't see a backup catcher for a while, and obviously with the season just starting, that's a concern. I don't know what you have as far as pop off the bench. And granted, the bench has changed these days because you don't pinch hit like you used to. So you have that issue. And I would say probably a concern if it's a major, I wouldn't say major, but I would think backup middle infielder, a legitimate backup middle infielder. I think that would be a concern. Other than that, pitching is what it is. One of the things that I think we have to take into account is when you're in this situation at this time of the year and you face the same team so much, they get familiar with you, you get familiar with them. Nobody's game planning. I mean, the game planning kind of started this week, but it's really hard to assess how good certain pitchers are. And the best example is Andrew Suarez was probably the best left-handed reliever out of the bullpen other than Zach Thompson. He didn't make the team. Mm-hmm. So you have those situations that you look at, but I don't think there's any glaring concern right now other than the fact that we need some outfielders to produce.
And that was going to be my next question, which you kind of answered with the pitching. Give me something that you saw that maybe doesn't look great when you look at the numbers, when you look at everything, that does not concern you at all for the coming out of spring training.
Well, I'm going to go back to the outfield. I mean, Jordan Walker got out to a torrid start, cooled off a little bit. The other guys didn't do anything. That built momentum. Now, maybe you had a couple of guys that play well in the WBC, but as I've said before, the WBC can be a misnomer because if there's one thing the WBC lacks is pitching. So in that regard, I don't know what we have with regard to the other three outfielders.
Yeah, and we'll see how they rotate those guys in as the week goes on. I was kind of, as I asked those questions, I figured at least in one of those two categories, you'd mentioned Jack Flaherty, who we saw yesterday struggle again. The one spring training game I went to, he struggled in that one to get out of an inning. We saw multiple times Jack Flaherty pulled out of an inning and then put back in a following inning just to get to his pitch total. So you talked to him a few weeks ago. You sat down. You've seen a lot of his starts. What is your assessment of the Cardinals' number 2 starter going into the season?
Good question. When I saw him early, he was just towing it and throwing it, all right? Trying to see the reaction of what hitters were doing to certain pitches. Then he ran into a situation where his slider was so good that umpires wouldn't give him the call. So then he had to try and adjust. So then he got into a thing where I think he started overthinking it. And I think if Jack Flaherty has one issue that I know he wants to be better at, quit thinking about it so much. You're a pitcher. You know how to pitch. You've proven you know how to pitch. And just pitch. I think that's the biggest challenge he has because his stuff is good. I mean, I think what you see him do sometimes, he'll throw pitches just to see if he can get it over for strikes or throw it just to see the reaction on certain hitters. But I think overall his fastball has good movement. The slider is dynamite. I think yesterday he got under the ball a little too much, and I think that's one of the reasons why he found himself, sailing everything wide. But overall, I'm not as concerned as some. I know some people are like, oh, what are we going to do if he doesn't? Yeah, you're right. If he doesn't perform, then I think we have some bigger concerns. But I think he will. Physically, he's ready to go. I think mentally, he's ready to go. I just think that yesterday was one of those days where he just had it handed to him. And as I checked, there were a bunch of other guys that had it handed to him as well. So I think we take this, we move forward. You don't baby this guy. You know, you got to let us, hey, man, we need you to go out and pitch.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the one thing I've learned and seen about him. He has become so mechanical where if the moon and stars do not align, then he's not as effective. And his body language will tell you everything. The pitch clock. And here's something I've noticed with pitchers who aren't in sync. They get a runner on base, they'll throw to first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just to kind of break up the monotony of what's going on with regard to pitches. And that tells me that he's not convicted to the pitches. I've seen him throw to second. I've seen some other pitchers do it as well when you can see they're not in sync. And I think sometimes that comes from the mechanical side of pitching because they have so many people that break you down, shoulder in, knee up or back, you know, or when you open your hips. I mean, there's so many things along with staying on top of the ball instead of, you know, when that thumb is on the side instead of on the bottom, you're asking for trouble. And yesterday I thought his thumb was on the side a little too much, hence the reason his elbow is a little lower. You know, and I'm not a pitching coach, okay? I've never been one in Major League Baseball, but I've seen enough bad pitchers in my life to know what they're doing wrong.
Let's look at this opening day roster. Opening day Thursday, Cardinals starting off at home this year, and I haven't looked at the other 29 teams to see how they start off their season, but I can't imagine anybody is starting off with a tougher 1-2 than the Cardinals at home against the Blue Jays and the Braves as they kick off their season. In fact, MLB.com yesterday just came out with their top 10 lineups. Offensive lineups for the 2023 season. Cardinals on that list were their starting lineup was listed number 4 as the 4th best offensive lineup in all of baseball. The Blue Jays were number 3. The Braves were number 5. So a whole lot of offense.
Who's number 1?
Who do you think is number 1? No, not the Astros number 1.
Huh. Well, maybe there were some guys that didn't play. I mean, I don't know how they can make that assessment with Altuve not out of the lineup and Brantley not available.
When you add,
I got to think that they wrote this thing down at the beginning of spring training.
Padres are going to be without Tatis for how many games to start the year?
It's a good question. I'm not.
So you know you're starting without him. The Astros, I mean, Yordan Alvarez and Jose Abreu in the middle of that lineup with everybody else they have in there too. That's with Kyle Tucker in there and that's still, I mean, yeah, you lose Altuve, but that's a really, really dangerous.
And you don't have Brantley
lineup.
Either. You don't have Brantley. Brantley's still hurt. He was your DH.
Yeah.
So I think that sounds like something somebody wrote well before the beginning, probably before the middle of spring training. I don't see how that lineup would work. And I really don't know how they can come up with a Cardinal lineup like that because I think the WBC really made everybody step back, you know, the good players who were participating. And by the way, while we're on the subject of roster, there's a lot of guys that didn't make teams this year because they were at the WBC, because they didn't get enough of a look and somebody else moved in front of them. If you're a fringe guy, and you're not sure, you might want to think about who's paying your paycheck. The WBC is not paying it. Your team is. And if you want to make a ball club, I think that's how you have to go about it. And if you don't believe me, ask Jojo Romero or Genesis Cabrera for starters.
I think, though, I'm sure there are arguments the other way.
Okay.
That you could say guys went and made money off of being in the WBC. Take
like
Lars Nootbaar. Lars Nootbaar made himself a whole lot of money.
Well,
doing that
on the field or as an endorsement? Because I haven't seen Lars Nootbaar show me anything yet.
He made it in endorsements, but
okay. Well, you know what? I'm not worried about whether he's doing a shoe deal. I'm worried about how many hits he can get every day.
That's you. I'm just saying.
But see, here's the thing: Lars Nootbaar would be non-existent if he wasn't on a baseball team,
right?
So my point being this. Well, all that money that everybody thinks he's making because he played in Japan and it was a good idea for him to go, Is it a good idea for him if he comes back and he sucks during the season?
We'll find out.
Yeah, you can
We'll
take that
find out. We
let
saw
new bar argument don't wash at all.
JoJo Romero had a big spot and a big game and did not come through.
Yeah, maybe if he'd have been here or been in spring training where he would have gotten more work, maybe that would have changed things around for him. Same thing with Hennessy Cabrera. Same thing
But
with
the thing is, though,
Giovanni Gallegos.
if JoJo Romero gets those outs and doesn't allow that 3-run homer,
But he didn't.
Okay. And you could say the same thing for spring training.
Point being, though, here's the thing. You got eyes on you in your own camp. All right. And this is not just me talking. There are other people who are already whispering how this thing is going. It was going to affect players before they even left. Now that we see the other side of the coin, there are certain guys who probably would have been better off staying where they were.
You froze up there as you were making your point on the other side of the coin. I know that there are going to be arguments both ways. We saw Trey Turner come back from being hot at the WBC, homered in his first at bat with the Phillies again. We'll see. We'll see. And you know what? At the end of April, we can sit down and we can look at what the guys that went there did and who's hot, who's not compared to what they did.
You're missing my point. You just use Trey Turner. Trey Turner is a really good player.
Yeah.
Paul Goldschmidt is a really good player. Nolan Arenado is a really good player. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about guys who are on the fringe of their own team, not their country, but their team.
And those guys the guys have the opportunity. Look at Nick Martinez. He showed up there. He pitched. He didn't pitch well.
He got his ass handed to him.
And he goes, you know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to pitch for the Padres. I'm going to go back and I'm going to get my innings and I'm going to get my work in. So maybe that's what needs to be done. Maybe the rosters need to be expanded a bit to where if a player looks at it and says, hey, I could be getting more work at camp, that's more important to me, I'm going to leave.
That's my whole point. There's some guys who should have thought about that beforehand. And I'm of the belief, if you really want to look at this thing and peel off another layer to it, what Martinez did probably helps his situation. And I think if I'm a pitcher and I get it handed to me, hey, adios, I'm out. You know, because I can't help this team anymore. I better be able to go back and try and help my own team. And Martinez was smart enough to do it. There were some other guys who didn't even play enough to get in games, and now they got nothing. Or they got something. They're in Memphis, or they're in some minor league town.
I'd have to go through the rosters and see who. I mean, we know locally Cabrera, I mean, when you look at the way Zach Thompson and Packy Naughton pitched last year, I think keeping all of those lefties was a big question mark anyway. And you've raved about Drew Verhagen and the work that he's done at spring training, earning that roster spot as well. So I don't know, whose spot would they have taken? How well did Zach Thompson and Packy Naughton pitch to win those spots over Hennessy Cabrera and JoJo Romero?
Well, good question. Because you know what? While Packy Naughton pitched well, I thought his job was still available. I thought his job was still one that could have been had.
And is he added to the roster because he can go longer? And in April, you might need that.
Well, you got a couple of guys that can go long. You got Thompson that can go long. You have Verhagen that can go long. So I mean and you have Palante that can go long. But my point being, and again, only because we've seen Cabrera the last couple of years and he has good stuff, wasn't as consistent as he needed to be. Packy turned it up a notch. He put a couple more miles an hour on his fastball. But my overall point is this: if you create competition in your camp, then maybe they start looking at you a little longer than they looked at Packy Naughton. Because if he wasn't here, they look around, they're like, well, hell, this is the only guy we got that's competing. So let's go ahead and keep him.
Let's look at the rest of the roster, some of the big notable additions to the roster, and let's start with Jordan Walker, who is going to be the youngest Cardinal to make a major league debut in the field in 100 years, since 1923.
Did we know who that guy was?
I saw it the other day. damn it, and I can't remember if I retweeted it, but I saw the year was 1923.
Yeah, I don't
That
know who the guy was, though. I don't know who the player was.
if I scroll through and I find it, I can't remember who it was, but anyway, you saw him all throughout spring. You saw the hype that he came in with, and we see that he is now on the team for opening day. How excited are you to see Jordan Walker wearing number 18 at Busch Stadium on Thursday?
Well, I was happy for him. The more time you spend around him, the more you come to appreciate him and his family and what they meant to him. He wasn't going to get outworked. He really meshed well with the veterans and some other players and coaches, always willing to ask questions and trying to make sure that the places he hasn't been, somebody can tell him or give him an idea of what to expect. I just think the guy's just at 20 years old. Uh, he's further along than any other 20-year-old I've seen. Certainly in a Cardinal uniform.
Here it is from Sarah Lang on Twitter. The last Cardinal player to appear in a game at the age of 20 or younger was Rick Ankiel back in 2000. The last position player to appear in a game 20 or younger, 1981, David Green.
We don't even know if David Green was actually 21. Let's pump the brakes on that. There was always some question about how old David Green actually was.
How old? What? I don't know the story behind. I don't know. I've never heard the name David Green before.
Are you kidding me? David Green was one of the top prospects in the Milwaukee organization. The Cardinals picked him up in the trade with Raleigh Fingers. He was kind of a throw-in. This guy could do everything. He could run like the wind, strong as a bull, very agile, was hurt a lot, had some off-field issues. But David Green, man, this guy had stardom written all over him. He just recently passed, I believe it was last year. He had a lot of off the field issues. I ended up playing softball league against him, and some guys didn't know who he was. I said, "Hey, be careful! Don't even think about pitching this guy." All right, phenomenal player. I mean, I'm telling you, this guy could flat out play, and he was penciled to be the center fielder. Pulled a hamstring, and they called up a guy named Willie McGee.
That changed your life too a little bit, huh?
Changed everybody's life. Yeah.
the last player 20 years old to start on opening day for the St. Louis Cardinals, 1923, Howard Freigau, Freigau. We'll have to ask Kamish for a player profile.
I don't think the Kamish saw him. I'm just going to take a wild guess on that. But that's interesting. I'm sure we can baseball reference him and see what sort of career he had.
Yeah.
But it's a really good accomplishment. And one of the things about this, and I mentioned it to you before, that the first person, and because he was so adamant about it for him, John Mozeliak was very adamant about paying attention to this guy. And I had some private conversations with him, and he even said then, he said, "Hey, this is a guy you ought to pay attention to. He got a chance." And for Mo to go out on that limb, be it a small one, and he doesn't do that. If you've never heard John Mozeliak talk up a prospect in the manner that he did with this young man.
Yeah.
And then when you meet him, you say, all right. Or when you see him, then you're like, holy cow. I mean, this guy's 6'6". He's 250 pounds. He can run. He can do everything well. And I think the best thing that happened to him was having Mason Wynn around him. Mason Wynn is going to be the leader of this team one day.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we know about his baseball skills, but if you get the chance to know him, you can just see that this guy is going to be the captain, if you want to call it that. He's going to be the fire plug. He's going to be the guy that's going to make things go. And
Mason Wynn did enough. Yeah, he did enough in spring training to make the team too. There's just not a spot
no doubt.
for him.
Yeah.
There's not a spot for him. And if a spot at short or second base somehow opens up, if you move, if you have to move Donovan to the outfield, Wynn's the next guy up.
And he can play either position.
Yeah.
If somebody goes down with a prolonged injury, we're going to see him. The key here is for him, he's got to be able to play on a regular basis. That's the challenge you have to deal with. But this guy's got all the talent, man. I mean, he's got the talent, and he's got that skill set of integrity and leadership that I think that you're going to look for in a guy. He just needs to play. He just needs some experience. Yeah. And I know that it was interesting. he and the kid that made the Yankee ball club, Volpe,
Yeah.
they know each other real well, and they look forward to competing against each other. And so I was asking him about him. I said, I really haven't seen much of him. I said, I think I've seen him a couple of at bats, saw him in the field a couple of times. He said, hey, he's a really good player. He said he can make the Yankees. He said, and I promise you, you'll be seeing a lot of me and him in the big leagues before anybody thought so.
Yeah, the Cardinals have a video up right now of Ollie telling Jordan Walker that he made
Yeah,
the team.
that's a cool video too, by
Yeah,
the way.
so it's always fun. A lot of teams put those out there when they have those rookie prospects make the team, or when they have a good story of calling a guy up. So you can go watch that right now. The Cardinals have it up on all their social media accounts. And then stick around to the end, because when you see Jordan Walker stand up and hug Ollie and hug Joe McEwing, you see just how large of a person he is. Or just go on Claibs' Twitter account at Claibs Online and scroll down and look at
that picture alone. I mean, seriously, as I was, we were talking one, and his hands are the size of a laptop. Okay, I mean, he's just a big young man. But man, St. Louis is gonna like him. For all the right reasons. But I remind people he's 20 years old. And hopefully the veterans, and I think we have a good group of veterans that will make sure that they kind of point him in a good direction. So we'll see. It should be fun to have him on the team.
Yeah, the two others that I wanted to talk about, we mentioned it a few weeks ago. I brought up the name of Taylor Motter to you, and you had kind of said, nope, he's not, that's not a guy.
Still feel that way.
If he made the team, something happened. What happened?
I think that because no one else was better, Juan Yepes wasn't good enough. We had some other guys that were given opportunities. They gave this guy a lot of at-bats, all right? But he hustles, he plays hard. But there's a reason why the guys played 899 minor league games and only 161 games. Major league games, 161 games. And I'm sure we'll find out at some point. I think the challenge for a guy like that is he's not going to play a lot.
No.
And so how does he stay sharp in an environment like this? And maybe he's a good guy in the clubhouse and all that. He seems like a very nice person. But I don't know if Taylor Motter is going to be on your roster in September. I don't see it. And I'm not wishing anything against him. I'm just saying by then somebody else would probably step up and do something. Injuries. This is a very volatile position to be the 26th man in that situation, because you ask yourself the question, okay, what does he really do well?
He's a guy. I mean, you want Yepes to continue to get at bats in Memphis. He wasn't going to get those here, and
true, and that has a lot to do with it too. But here's
the Young's injury too. I mean, that takes out the guy that would have been your backup shortstop. So Motter kind of just fills that role in the infield to fill in.
He can play
if necessary.
He can play second, third, and first.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's a shortstop, but you got
Donovan's your backup shortstop.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting roster, but I think it's a byproduct of how the camp was constructed, where we had so many levels of competition at different positions. And I commend Ali and Mo and those guys for bringing in guys who were competing. We didn't even see Fermin, middle infield. He had a quad injury that really shut him down for the whole spring. That's a guy you better pay attention to. Wilking Rodriguez, I just don't know. I mean, I think they stashed him, for lack of a better term, because they didn't know what to do with him. I mean, he's got a power fastball. There's no doubt about it. But I think they feel like maybe there's some things they can tweak with him to make him an effective pitcher. The Paul DeJong saga is one that I don't know how this is going to end up. I would not be surprised if we never see Paul DeJong in a Cardinal uniform again, because I just don't know where it's going to come from. Okay, he's hurt now. He wasn't very effective when he was in the spring. You got Edman, Donovan, and now Mason Wynn, all guys that are in front of him. So I'm trying to figure out what's his impact? What's his impact for a guy who hasn't been productive since before the pandemic? So a lot of things are on his plate that I think that we have to take into account on what his future really looks like.
Yeah. So opening day is on Thursday. Follow us on Twitter at Joe Roderick at Claibs Online. We have tickets to give away all season long, not opening day tickets, but tickets all season long to go out there and see Jordan Walker and the rest of the St. Louis Cardinals all year as we go on. And hey, also too, giveaways are starting up right as the season does. On April 1st, it's not an April Fool's joke because on that Saturday, the Cardinals host the Blue Jays, and that day, 25,000 fans ages 16 and older will take home a mystery bobblehead. Claibs, it's either going to be Yachty or it's going to be Albert pitching, courtesy of Central Bank. For tickets, visit cardinals.com/promotions to get your Yachty or Albert pitching bobblehead this Saturday, April 1st, out at Busch Stadium.
Should be a lot of fun.
That's one I can't wait to see what that one looks like. Hey, we are going to take a break. A lot of Cardinal talk here in the first 25 minutes of the show. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the Final Four. It's all set as they head down to Houston for this weekend, and we'll talk about it right here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura.
There's always been a bright side to living in downstate Illinois. Ameren, Illinois is making it even brighter with a little help from the sun. Right now, we're building a next-generation solar facility to bring you cleaner energy for generations to come. It's good for the environment, your neighborhood, and everyone living in downstate Illinois. That's brighter thinking. That's energy at work. Learn how you can participate in solar programs at amerenillinois.com/renewables.
Back here, Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura, also Mungenast Burkhardt Alton Toyota. Claibs, Jamie, I saw him last week, and he provided me with a new pullover with the Mungenast Burkhardt logo on it. He said it's a very rare collector's edition. Doug Vaughn doesn't even have one of these, and I have it now as the name is the Burkhardt name is being thrown onto the logo.
Well, I got to try and see if I can work my magic and get one in a medium. I will proudly wear it. Jamie and the staff over there have been terrific to us, and hopefully you, the customer, have a chance to go by there and see for yourself what a good job they've done, especially during the pandemic. And you know, we had the shortages, the supply chain issues, and all of that. But things are starting to come back, and I think what I would say to you, if you're thinking now that spring and sprung, hey, it's a good time. They have some great deals going on over there. They've got a better selection. It's something that I think people, now that we're starting to settle in a little bit, it's a good idea to maybe give them a try. They've got leasing, they've got purchasing, they've got a ton of used cars over there, pre-owned cars that have all been certified by Mungenast Burkhardt Toyota, that you can go over and get one for yourself or maybe a youngin' or somebody else in your family. But bottom line is, make that your first start. And if you do that, I can almost guarantee you won't have to look anywhere else, because most people make that one stop and all of a sudden they're friends for life because they made the right decision in going to Mungenast Burkhardt Toyota of Alton.
Yeah, I emceed my son's school auction this past Saturday, and during the event, had one of the parents at the school come up to me, and they said, "Hey, I dropped your name today out at Mungenast Alton Toyota," and I said, "Really?" And they were looking for a car for their 16-year-old, and he said, "What's the Joe Roderick discount?" And I think it caught the salesperson off guard.
He was like, "Okay,"
and he goes, "Hold on, let me go check." He goes, "Let me go ask." He said
department. We're talking about another Joe Roderick. Anybody know Joe Roderick?
And he said he took it back. He said he wasn't sure. I assume it was a Saturday, so I assume he took the number back to Jamie. He said the salesperson came back with a lower price. So there you go. You name drop us, and you'll get a lower price for us out there at Mungenast Burkhardt Alton Toyota, Mungenast St. Louis Acura. Claib, let's talk Final Four. I still got one left. I still got my champion left, and it's
Who's
looking
your champion?
The Yukon Huskies. Yeah, it's looking real good right now.
Tell you who mine is on a sheet that I threw in at the last minute. Florida Atlantic.
Shut up.
I'm serious. And you know what? I watched them a couple of times while I was down in Florida. Long story on why I was there. But anyway, I was kind of saying, they're athletic enough to make this interesting. And then you start looking at the brackets because, and if you go back, and some of our listeners can go back and check out our podcast with the commish, and we said at the beginning, there's 20 to 25 teams that could win this thing, okay? And we're talking about teams like Florida Atlantic, teams like UConn, teams like San Diego State, because, two things. One, we haven't seen a lot of them. Two, because of the portal, these guys are either better or worse. And three, because coaches are trying to still figure out what they have. I really felt like, now granted, this tournament doesn't have the name power that we've been accustomed to because the number one seeds are just about done, or they're done. But when it comes to the game of playing basketball and the players running plays and doing all the right things, I think for a basketball purist, this has been fun basketball to watch. Because we don't have, I guarantee you this, how many one and dones do you think we have playing in this tournament right now? Of the Final Four, how many one and dones are there?
In the Final Four?
Yes, in the Final Four. How many do you think are there?
God, I haven't even looked at any kind of like draft projections.
That's my point.
NBA,
because normally, if you have the other teams, the teams that have a better household name, you say, well, he's going to the NBA, or he's going. I don't know. And just like it took you a second to think about it, that's my point about how this tournament has become so balanced with respect to the players and their impact on their teams, not as their draft style.
Yeah, but UConn. What number bracket was it that you threw them in there as? For FAU? No, for FAU.
I had FAU getting to the Final Eight.
Out of what? Okay.
Yeah, I had them going to the Final Eight. But you know what? They busted up the bracket so well. The one bracket that's the one I'm still in, because none of the other people. I had San Diego State advancing. The pool that I'm in the lead, and none of my favorites are in the finals.
I can't imagine anybody's favorites are left in the finals. My go-to's always been UConn. Always has been. Always will be. If they're a 4 or above, I always throw them in there in my to win it all. And
Hurley's done a nice job there.
He has.
For
those that thought that it was
basketball family. I mean, his brother and his dad are just Stad's in the Hall of Fame. His brother's coaching at was he at Arizona now?
It's Arizona State. Arizona State, yeah.
And he kind of was the unknown Hurley, but what he's done for that program, who was under. Remember how they fired their other coach?
I was just going to say, yeah, they fired Kevin Ollie, and a lot of the UConn fan base didn't like it. I mean, that was they go. It was he won him a championship. He was a guy. He was an alum.
He was one of them.
There. Yeah. And they fire him just to bring in, a guy with a last name that everybody knew, and the fan base was not happy. But I imagine he's gotten a lot of them back on board.
Well, he's not the level of Gino yet, but you know what? This certainly is a great feather in his cap. And because I don't really have a dog in the fight, I just want to see a good game. Although I will say this, I haven't been as attentive as I normally would because there's so many unrecognizable names in this tournament. And, for me, there's so many other things I could be doing. It's hard for me to watch. And, I don't know if I'd say it was the best played games. And I'll give you a good example. When I see a game that ends in the 50s, I'm probably already turned the game off.
Yeah.
And yesterday with Creighton and when they were playing San Diego State.
What was your thought on the foul at the end of the game?
It was a foul.
Yeah.
He got him by the hip. And I'm sure that coach today, as he looks at the film, and I'd be interested to see if anybody's going to ask him, hey, coach, have you had a chance to see the video? Do you think that was a foul? I'd be interested to see what he says. If he comes out and says, you know what, upon further review, the official got it right. It was a tough call for him to make. And that's why we have the best officials out there, because it was a tough call, but we have to accept it and move on because the game wasn't decided on one foul. We had our chances and we didn't execute when we needed to. And that's why we're watching the Final Four on TV and they're not.
Let me switch it over to the women's side of things, because last night we saw something that had never happened before in the NCAA tournament, both women's and men's side. Have you watched any of Caitlin Clark this year?
Yes, I have. I have been watching her.
Yeah, the girl
she
from Iowa. She
kind of reminds me of Jamie Stiles that played in Missouri State. You look at her and you say,
I remember that name, yes.
How does she score? But she has multiple ways of scoring. And I made a point the other day, and I'm going to go back to this and talk about the men too, because we've seen some games be won on long jump shots, not heaves. And the reason why we're seeing so many of these young players making these long range shots is Stephen Curry, because Curry made it okay for guys to shoot right past the timeline. Curry made sure it was okay for guys to shoot when, you could have taken 2 more dribbles in. And now we're seeing it move on to the college level. And I'm sure there's some high schoolers that are doing the same thing. And it's all because of Steph Curry and what he's been able to do. Think about the fact he's not 6'9". He's, if he walks in a room, he looks like a normal person as far as height is concerned. And he's not a muscle bound guy. He's tough. But bottom line is he looks more like you and me than we look like LeBron.
The Caitlin Clark last night, 41 points, 12 assists, 10 rebounds. Nobody had ever had a triple-double in March Madness history where they scored at least 30 points, and she went and scored 40 points.
I was riveted to that game after, because I was watching the LSU game, and I was pulling for LSU. But once she got going, I was like, you know what, this is fun. I called a buddy of mine, say, I don't know if you're what. He said, yes, I am. And just how she can make her shot. And you know what? They were throwing the kitchen sink at her. She just had the answer. And that's what made it fun.
Is she the biggest name in college basketball right now?
That's a good question, man. You got the girl, the Boston kid, South Carolina. She's really good. You
can't even think of the name right now.
Her name is Boston. Her last name is Boston.
I thought you said Boston kid.
No. She's probably WNBA material, but I think she's good.
I'm talking men's and women's. I'm not talking I'm talking men's and women's. Is Caitlin Clark the biggest name in college basketball right now?
You mean they're still playing?
Yes. Well, I'm just who is the biggest name in the men's?
Oh, I don't know. I had to think about it. I really hadn't looked at her like that, but considering her numbers, I probably should. Because she's been giving it to everybody for the last few years. This isn't something that just kind of came out of nowhere. Well, she's got over 3,000 points in her career.
I mean, we can sit here and play who he play for with the men's side, and I don't know if I'd be able to get any of those right. You tell me you say Caitlin Clark, and I'm saying Iowa.
You know what I would do? I'd have to name the school before I can name the player.
Yeah.
Like for instance, the guy at Duke. Or the guy in North Carolina, who's the guy who said he's coming back again? The guy in North Carolina said he's coming back. So, it's like that. And that's a great point you make, because when you mention her name, you automatically equate her with Iowa.
Yeah. So that's a pretty big, and she still has a year left. She can still come back next year. And I think she's already said that that she probably will come back next year. She could probably make more money, NIL money in Iowa than she would with a WNBA contract. That's a great point. So, probably smart for her to stay one more year in that. Hey, let's take our final break. When we come back, wrap it up with a little NBA and NHL talk right here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura.
As one of St. Louis's fastest growing companies and largest private companies, St. Louis Acura is proud to serve you and remains committed to becoming better than ever for you. As new Acuras become more available every day, we are not backing down from selling 100% more quality pre-owned vehicles than ever before. We want customers that appreciate our friendly, outgoing team and our award-winning service, because at St. Louis Acura, we are better than ever for you.
Claib's final segment here as we start to wind down on the NHL and NBA seasons. LeBron made his return against the Bulls yesterday. And Pat Beverly had his way with him, and had a good time
about Pat Beverly. He might be the most irrelevant player in the history of the NBA who gets more exposure than the law allows. I mean, he plays hard. I think he plays cheap. But, we give that guy way too much credit.
Because when he has good games, he makes it about him, and he, Okay.
All right. Anyway, Lakers. I'm gonna borrow a term from Charles Barkley about the Lakers. They stink. They've been stinking all year. I'm done with them. And now they want to pay this one guy. They want to give him a 4-year deal, bro. You're not even in the playoffs, and you're getting a contract extension. Come on, man. Rob Pelinka who's the president of the team, president of basketball operations, has become one of the worst general managers in the history of the NBA for a team that's supposedly having that sort of talent and that tradition. He just destroyed everything. And then they had the nerve to give him an extension.
Right now, the Lakers are the 9th seed in the playoffs.
Don't make a difference. Even if they get in the play-in, man, who cares? They're not going anywhere. At one point I thought they could make it interesting. And I think I even said it to you. They could beat anybody, but they can't beat everybody. They can't beat anybody anymore.
You know who the hottest team in the NBA is right now?
Go for it.
Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, they're playing well.
Yeah.
And I tell you, that Dallas thing is going in the opposite direction so fast. It's embarrassing. It's truly embarrassing on what's going on with Dallas.
And it's not that hard when you sit there and you go, what changed? One thing changed. They added Kyrie Irving.
Well, how I feel about him and what he was doing in the previous situation. I'll tell you a team that we don't talk about is that Sacramento Kings bunch. They got the 3rd best record in the conference, man. I mean, and nobody talks about them because A, you never see them on TV. B, they have a lot of young players that are starting to come into their own. I don't know how far they'll go in the playoffs. They're going to get some home games, so that might help them a little bit. But I really feel like the playoffs this year, there's no clear-cut winner here. I mean, the West, you have 3 or 4 teams that have the pieces, but
maybe
they don't have the chemistry.
That. I mean,
I'm talking about teams that realistically.
I'm talking like Golden State is 30-8 at home this year. 30-8 at home.
They're not going to have home court advantage if they get in the playoffs.
If they steal a road game though every series, it's over.
They haven't been able to steal any of this during the season.
I know that, but I'm just saying if stuff changes.
I don't even think they've won 10 games this season.
They are
on the
9-29. 9-29 on the road.
Now, with that said,
you open them up against Sacramento though. Can they beat Sacramento at home?
We don't know. Sacramento's been pretty good at home themselves. But, it's the playoffs. I think it really depends on Golden State's health more than anything else, getting everybody on the same page.
I'd say that same thing about the Suns. If the Suns are healthy, there might not be a better starting 5.
I mean, when you think about Durant, they got a post game. When you look at Booker and what he's able to do, and if Chris Paul can stay healthy, I think that's important too. They don't have much of a bench, so you're asking some great beers to put some long miles on their tires. So we'll have to see how that works.
And then over on the east side of things, maybe it's Milwaukee, Boston, Philadelphia.
I think everybody else is fool's gold.
Mm-hmm.
Those 3 are the best teams, and they've been the best teams from day one. A little disappointed in Miami. Saw them a couple of times, and I tell you one thing: that Kevin Love has regressed dramatically.
Man.
I mean, I can see why. Who bought him? Cleveland bought him out, and congratulations to Cleveland. They're in the playoffs, and who knows what they can do on the right night. So I think that it's going to be one of those deals that don't take anybody for granted. Take care of home court. And whoever has a deep bench, they have a chance to go someplace.
And then over on the NHL side of things, similar timeline for the end of the season with them. The Blues have been bad lately since the trade deadline, but damn it, they've been fun. Hey, Saturday and Sunday, they scored a combined 12 goals.
Yeah.
That's it was on the West Coast, but
was it 5-1 at one point? And I'm like, okay, let's watch something else here. Then they lose 7-6. But I don't really care about the Blues.
No.
Build some chemistry, go into the offseason, draft well, sign a free agent, and let's see what happens from there.
Improve that defense so you're not giving up 5 goals in the first.
I'll tell you there's a couple of stories in the NHL. Excuse me. The Florida Panthers made that huge deal for Matthew Tkachuk, right? They're going to probably miss the playoffs. This is a team that was destined to get to the finals last year, all right? They're going to miss. Calgary Flames, they go out and get Kadri, and they get a haul for Tkachuk. There's a good chance they want to fire Sutter, and they're going to get Sutter fired. Daryl Sutter's going to get fired, and general manager's going to get fired. And then we'll see where they go from here. There are some teams in the West that you better pay attention to. I don't think Vegas is as good as the Kings. I know Vegas is number one in the Western Conference, but the Kings they check every box right now for me. So that's a team you better pay attention to. I know everybody talks about Colorado. Well, Colorado can't stay healthy. So that's a problem. And the rest of the teams don't. And Edmonton, you better, because they got McDavid and Draisaitl. They're going to be fun to watch. But I think this is a come to Jesus moment for them. They have to be able to get to the conference finals. I wouldn't overlook Dallas. I think they're a little small. They might get worn down, but they can skate with anybody. And then somebody better figure out how to beat the Boston Bruins because
they're running away with things right now. 119 points.
They got a guy that's a plus 47. We got a guy that's a minus 35. He's got more. I think he has more. He's like 2 minuses more than goals he scored in Jordan Kyrou. It's an incredible. I mean, I'm like, wait a minute. This guy's got 30-something goals and he's a minus 35? A lot of work to do for the St. Louis Blues organization in the offseason.
Claibs, this weekend is WrestleMania. Your thoughts on the card, the main event, Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns?
I got to tell you, with all the baseball going on and, trying to follow St. Louis City and the battle, I just haven't had a chance to really break it down like you have.
Okay.
But I'm sure you can. Who do you like in that situation?
I want Roman Reigns to keep the belt and go make it 1,000 days as the champs. That's what I'm hoping for this weekend. John Marisek and I will break it all down for you this Saturday at 10 a.m. on 590 The Fan KFNS.
Where is this event taking place at?
This is at SoFi Stadium, Saturday and Sunday.
That's the place where they can't play the World Cup because
That's correct, yes.
So, I was told this story, and I was sworn to secrecy last year that they were going to have a problem with this. And I just kind of, when I heard about it, I just started laughing. This was a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. And somebody who's connected said, hey, I don't know if they're ever going to play a World Cup game there. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, it's a structural issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, can't they? He said, I don't think they can. He said, this has been going on for a while. And the World Cup kind of let them know way back, hey, this might be a problem. This might be a concern. And they thought they were going to poo-poo it. Now it's come to light. And I won't shed a tear for anybody out there. I'm told it's a very nice facility. I'm just trying to figure out how you spend over $5 billion. How do you make that money back?
Big events like the World Cup.
Well,
you can't host.
But here's the thing. Even with that, that's fine. We're talking about billions of dollars. So how many years do you think it takes for him to make sure this thing is, paid for?
I mean, he might not be alive to see it all get paid back.
Yeah, maybe that's why he doesn't care.
Yeah, I mean, you got the Olympics coming there. You got national championships for basketball and football. And
so here's my question, and maybe you don't know this. I wonder how much they charge per event.
You're talking for
SoFi Stadium.
Well, I mean, you saw too. I mean, you saw this last year. That's where the college football championship game was, and they wouldn't allow tailgating. So does college football look at that and say, you know what, this wasn't worth it to us? The fans weren't happy with it. We don't want to go back there now.
But again, my question is, what do they charge? $1 million a user, $2 million, $3 million? I don't know. And I'm sure it'd be hard for us. Well, I guess if I told them I had an event, they probably would tell me, but I don't
Call
have
them off and tell them you got an event coming up.
You know what?
Claibs Fest.
The chances of Kevin Demoff and I having a civil conversation are remote.
Yeah.
At best. He's one of the most despicable people I know that still walks this earth.
He sent a letter out to all the season ticket holders the other day telling them, explaining to them why the team was going to be bad.
Well, I'm not saying anything that he doesn't already know. Our history is one that if you put us in the room together and lock the door, it won't take that long. That's how I feel about him. I think he's one of the most despicable people I've ever met.
Well, Claibs, on that note, hey, big week coming up here on Claibs Online. In just a few minutes, we will have the newest article from the commish, Rick Hummel. I got it up here right here. All I got to do is hit a few buttons, and it'll be posted there on claibsonline.com. You and commish will have a podcast, I assume, before opening day?
We're trying to find times in between guys hopping out of pickup trucks on Thursday.
All right. Along with that, Rammer and I start Daily Cards Live this week, and we're going to start a series preview that you can read before each and every series here on Claibs Online as well, with everything else that we have featured week in and week out. I assume a two-man game coming your way about the Final Four. Also before the games tip off on Saturday. So keep it tuned in right here, wherever you find your podcasts, or whenever you go online to claibsonline.com to check out everything that we will have coming up this next week. For Mike Claiborne, I am Joe Roderick. We have been brought to you by Mungenast St. Louis Acura, Ameren, Illinois, also the St. Louis Cardinals, and all of our Rick Hummel stuff brought to you by Fast Eddie's Bon Air in Alton, Illinois.
Big announcement coming up soon.
And a great place to go watch Cardinal games this season. We will talk to you later right here on claibsonline.com.
From our roots in St. Louis, Royal Banks of Missouri is branching out to continue serving you with our locations in St. Charles, Jerseyville, Granite City, and now in Hannibal, Center, and New London. Royal Banks of Missouri, the community bank in your community.